The widowed millionaire's twins wouldn't stop crying, until the maid whispered this to them. Julian Hartman had once been the perfect image of a father, successful, composed, and devoted. And then, in a single rainy night, he became a man, raising 2 children inside a house filled with silence. A renowned architect, he built his own firm from nothing before the age of 40. Yet no brilliant design of his could mend the fractures within his own home after the sudden death of his wife. Maribel, the woman he had loved since their college years, was gone. She died in a car accident on a rainy night 2 years earlier. That night, Maribel had left the house to buy ice cream for the children after an evening filled with crying and angry outbursts. And in a single moment, everything collapsed. Iris and Alawan, only 6 years old at the time, watched their world shatter without knowing how to gather the broken pieces. Julian, consumed by grief, tried to remain strong for his daughters. But the harder he tried to appear strong, the more distant he became. The silence stretched on. Conversations grew fewer, then stopped altogether. That was when the girls began to change. From once affectionate and sweet children, the girls became withdrawn, silent, and unreadable. When the first nannies quit, Julian assumed it was simply a matter of adjustment. But when the 5th, the 10th, and then the 17th nanny left, he knew something far deeper was at work. Every woman who walked away carried the same look in her eyes: exhaustion, fear, and relief. "I can't continue, Mr. Hartman," the last nanny, Mrs. Sherrill, said as she clutched her suitcase. "The girls aren't just mischievous. They are trying to break people." Iris once poured salt into the sugar jar. Elwyn left haunted notes scattered across the living room. Both of them whispered to their mother's spirit in the dark. And then there was the doll, the old doll that had belonged to Maribel, placed in unsettling positions around the house as if it had replaced the image of their mother. No matter how intelligent or composed Julian was, he could not fix what had been broken. Each night he walked past Maribel's locked bedroom without ever daring to open the door, believing that if he did not touch the pain, perhaps it would not become too real. He tried therapy. Iris and Elwyn either refused to speak or deliberately sabotaged the sessions until the specialists eventually gave up. Gradually, Julian felt as though he had become nothing more than a bystander, watching 2 small souls drift farther and farther away from everything. Then one day, Clary, his assistant, entered his office with a worried expression. "Mr. Hartman, there are no agencies left willing to place a nanny. Iris and Alawan have been blacklisted." Julian leaned back against his leather chair, his empty gaze fixed on the unfinished blueprints before him. As an architect, he was accustomed to solving complex problems with structure and logic. But this time, logic was utterly powerless against 2 hearts quietly falling apart. "So what now?" he asked softly. Clary hesitated. "There is someone. Not from an official agency. She's young, but she has worked with families who've been through similar situations. She's not like the others." Her name was Noelia Reyes, 25 years old, no degree in education or psychology. But she possessed something no one else did. She had once been a wounded child herself. Noelia Reyes was entirely different from the previous candidates. At 25, she held no certifications, had never attended college, and had never planned to become a nanny. But when Clary called and mentioned 2 little girls drowning in the pain of losing their mother, Noelia did not hesitate. She grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Chicago. Her mother died of cancer when Noelia was only 8 years old. Her father, shattered by the loss, turned to alcohol and eventually disappeared. Noelia and her 3 younger siblings were raised by their grandmother. By the age of 15, she knew how to cook, soothe crying children, and explain death to a 5-year-old sister. She had no diplomas, but she carried 17 years of experience being an adult, a role no one had ever taught her how to play. For the past 3 years, Noelia had worked independently, helping families rejected by agencies, children on the autism spectrum, children consumed by grief, or those labeled too difficult. Her resume was far from perfect, but everyone who had ever hired her said the same thing. She doesn't come to work, she comes to listen. The first time Julian met Noelia, he was struck by her simplicity. A white t-shirt, worn jeans, neatly tied back hair. She made no effort to impress, yet the calm, deeply observant look in her eyes made him feel truly seen. "You can tell me everything," she said evenly. "Not the edited version. I need the truth." And Julian spoke. He told her about Maribel, the sudden accident, the silence that followed, about Iris and Alawan, and the helplessness of watching his daughters slowly slip beyond his reach. Noelia did not say much. She nodded, occasionally asking, "Have you ever told your children that you are hurting too?" After more than an hour, Noelia laid out 4 conditions. First, she would have full authority over Iris and Elowen during working hours, without interference, as long as there was no physical or psychological harm. Second, she needed access to Maribel's room, the room that had been locked since the day of the accident. Noelia was direct. Pain that is locked away turns into poison. Healing can only begin when we face the truth. Third, Iris and Alawan had to attend therapy, whether they wanted to or not. 8-year-old children do not get to refuse something that can help them heal. And fourth, Julian himself had to begin therapy. You are in pain, and you are raising your children inside that pain. If you want to save them, you have to start with yourself. Julian fell silent. No one had ever spoken to him that way before. No one had ever dared. "Do you agree, or do I walk away?" Noelia asked, her gaze unwavering. After a long moment, Julian nodded. "I agree. When do you start?" "Tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock. That night, Julian had the most difficult conversation with his daughters since Maribel's death. "Girls, I need to talk to you about Noelia." "We already have a plan for her," Iris said confidently. "She'll be gone before Friday." "No, Noelia isn't leaving. She's not like the others. She'll stay until you no longer need her." The twins fell silent for a few seconds. "That's impossible," Alawan said. "No one has ever lasted with us." "She will." "And there's one more thing," Julian continued. "You're both going to therapy." "No way," they shouted together. "It's not a choice. Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4 o'clock, with Dr. Marianne. And I'll be going to therapy too. Mondays and Wednesdays, 6 in the evening." The girls froze. For the first time, they realized that their father was hurting as well. "Why are you going to therapy?" Iris asked, her voice softer. "Because I miss your mother every day, and I don't know how to move forward. You deserve a father who knows how to take care of his own emotions." Silence. "Did Noelia tell you to say that?" Alawan asked. "She said this," Julian replied. "A family can only heal if it heals together." That night there were no sabotage plans. Instead, the girls whispered about a strange, unfamiliar feeling, the feeling of being understood by an adult, even when they did not yet understand themselves. "Do you think she'll really stay?" Alawan asked. "Everyone leaves," Iris replied. But this time her voice was no longer certain. Downstairs, Julian called Noelia. "Are you sure? Do you know what you're about to face?" "Mr. Hartman," Noelia replied, "I once cared for twins who set their bedroom on fire, a boy who only spoke through a puppet for 8 months, a girl who pretended to be mute for an entire year because her mother said she talked too much. Your daughters are intelligent and creative, but they are not uncontrollable. They are simply 2 8-year-old girls who lost their mother and are terrified of losing anyone else." "How can you be so sure?" Julian asked. "Because I was once an 8-year-old girl who lost her mother too." The next morning, exactly at 7 o'clock, Noelia rang the bell at the Hartman estate gate. This time she was dressed comfortably, sweatpants, a t-shirt, running shoes. Ready for the battle? Julian asked. I didn't come to fight, Noelia replied calmly. I came to bring peace. But when Iris and Elowen came down for breakfast, their eyes were full of defiance. A new campaign had begun. Sugar had been replaced with salt. Vinegar was poured into the milk. Plastic wrap was stretched tightly over the jam jar. Noelia sat down, spread butter on her toast, and completely avoided the jam. You don't put sugar in your coffee? Iris asked. I don't use sugar. What about milk? I don't drink milk either. The girls exchanged glances, disappointed. The first plan had failed, unintentionally. Do you drink milk? Noelia asked. Yes, Elowen answered quickly and poured herself a glass before Iris could stop her. She took one sip, grimaced, and spat it out. It's spoiled. That's strange, Noelia said, sniffing the carton. I opened it just yesterday. Milk doesn't go bad that fast unless someone adds something to it. She looked straight at Iris. For example, vinegar? Iris blushed but pretended innocence. I don't know anything about that. Of course, Noelia said, standing up. Elowen, come upstairs with me. Let's get the vinegar smell out of your teeth. As they walked, Noelia said quietly, When I was 8, I once poured vinegar into the milk. I wanted to prank my sister, but I drank the wrong glass. I got a stomachache and was scolded. Why did you do that? Elowen asked, curious. Because I was angry. She got a doll on my birthday. I thought it wasn't fair. But I learned something. Revenge hurts yourself more than it hurts anyone else. Elowen fell silent, thinking. When they returned, Iris had already prepared the haunted doll campaign. Their mother's old doll was placed everywhere, on Noelia's reading chair, in the bathroom, in the kitchen. Noelia quietly picked it up each time, placed it somewhere safe, and said nothing. Frustrated, Iris moved on to the whispering campaign. During the lunch break, she hid behind the sofa and whispered Noelia's name in a ghostly voice. Noelia. Noelia. Iris, if you want to talk, come here, Noelia said, her eyes still closed. I'm not Iris. All right. When the ghost is done playing, tell Iris to come here. I need to talk to her. Iris crawled out, stunned. How did you know it was me? Real ghosts don't hide behind sofas, and this morning you sprayed perfume on your wrist. Do you believe in ghosts? Iris asked, her voice trembling. I believe in memories that haunt us. I believe that the people we love, even after they're gone, still remain with us. And most of all, I believe in brave little girls who love their mother enough to remember her. Iris froze. We don't talk about Mom. I know, but not talking doesn't make her disappear from your heart. She paused. I think you miss your mother so much that you're afraid talking about her will hurt even more, so you pretend she never existed. What if talking about her hurts more? Iris asked. Then we let it hurt. But do you know what's worse than pain? What? Being in pain alone. Just then, Elowen walked in. She had heard everything. Mom didn't like it when we fought, Elowen whispered. Can you tell me more about your mom? Noelia asked gently. She used to sing lullabies. Every Sunday she baked animal-shaped cookies. She gave voices to every character in stories and danced with us in the rain. The girls began to cry. But this time the tears were softer. Still grief, but also release. Your mother didn't disappear, Noelia said, holding them tightly. Every time you do something that would make her proud, she's there. Every time you're kind to each other, she's there. But it still hurts, Iris said. I know. Losing someone you love is the greatest pain there is. But I learned something. What? Elowen asked. When we share our pain, it becomes lighter. When we share beautiful memories, they grow stronger. The girls clung to Noelia, crying for nearly an hour. When the storm finally passed, Iris asked the question that had haunted them for 2 years. Aunt Noelia, Is it our fault that Mom died? The question struck Noelia like lightning. Why do you think that? Because that night we argued with Mom, Elowen confessed. We refused to bathe, screamed, threw tantrums. Mom got angry and went out to buy ice cream to calm us. Then the accident happened. If we had behaved, Mom wouldn't have gone outside. Iris broke down in tears. Noelia's throat tightened. At last she understood. The girls weren't only grieving. They were carrying guilt. "Look at me," Noelia said gently, lifting each girl's face. "Your mother's accident was not your fault. But if we hadn't been screaming—" "There are no ifs," Noelia interrupted softly. "We can spend our whole lives trapped in what-ifs. But the truth is, an accident is an accident. It was not your fault. But Mom was angry because of us. So what? Do you think mothers only drive safely when they're happy? Your mother had tired days, sad days, cranky days, and she still loved you every single day." She took a deep breath. "Your mother left the house that night because she loved you. Even though she was tired, even though she was upset, she still wanted to do something that would make you happy. And that only proves how wonderful she was." Noelia's words were like sunlight breaking through dark clouds, slowly, gently, but powerful enough to change everything. "For 2 years, you've been carrying guilt that never belonged to you. And because of that, you forgot how to live the life your mother dreamed for you." "She wanted us to be happy," Iris whispered. "That's right. And the best way to honor her is to live fully, create beautiful memories, be kind, and grow into the wonderful young women she raised you to be." That evening, Julian came home and witnessed something he had not seen in 2 years. The girls talking about their mother, with tears, but also with smiles. "What's going on?" he asked, deeply moved. "We told Noelia about the night Mom died," Iris said, "about the guilt we've been carrying." Julian went pale. "What guilt, my loves?" "We thought it was our fault," Elowen whispered. Julian dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms tightly around them. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because we were afraid you would leave us too if you knew," Elowen sobbed. "No, you're not to blame. The accident happened because the driver was drunk." "Noelia told us that too," Iris said. "Because it's the truth," Julian replied, looking at Noelia with gratitude. "How did you know?" "Children act that way when they're punishing themselves," Noelia said. "They don't forgive themselves, so they push everyone away." That night, for the first time in 2 years, the girls asked their father to tell stories about their mother. They laughed together, remembering animal-shaped cookies, dancing in the rain, and Maribel's animated storytelling voice. "Dad," Elowen said before falling asleep, "can we visit Mom's grave tomorrow?" "Of course." "And bring flowers?" Iris asked, all the kind she loved. That night, for the first time, Iris and Elowen hugged Noelia themselves and wished her good night. "Aunt Noelia, you won't leave us, will you?" Iris asked. "I'll stay," Noelia smiled, "until you don't need me anymore." The next morning, Noelia walked into the kitchen and heard laughter. Not forced laughter, but real laughter, the sound of something that had once been shattered, slowly being pieced back together again. 3 months later, the Hartman home was completely transformed. There were no more scratched walls or broken flower pots. Instead, laughter echoed through the hallways. Iris and Elowen were still creative, but now they used that creativity for positive things. They attended therapy regularly, made new friends, and most importantly, they spoke about their mother with love, no longer with pain. One afternoon, while baking with Noelia, Iris said, "Aunt Noelia, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course." "At first I really wanted you to leave quickly." "Why?" "Because I was afraid I would love you, and then you would leave too." Iris looked up. "Now I know. You're not just a nanny, you're family." Noelia smiled, her heart full of warmth. "And you're my family, too." "Family isn't just about blood," Noelia said. "It's about choosing to love each other every day." Elwyn looked up from the pile of dough. "Aunt Noelia, do you have a boyfriend?" Noelia blushed and laughed. Julian changed as well. Through therapy, he learned to accept his loss, open up to his children, and speak honestly about his emotions. One evening, he asked Noelia, "Why do you do all of this?" Noelia replied, "When I was 8, my mother died. My father couldn't bear it. I learned that children don't need perfection. They just need steady love from someone who chooses to stay." One quiet Saturday morning, Noelia walked into the kitchen and noticed something unusual. Iris and Elwyn were whispering around a table covered in colored paper, glitter, scissors, and a plain cake. "What's going on?" Noelia asked. "Nothing," they both answered quickly. "You're not allowed in the living room before 6, Elwyn said. "Orders from the Commander-in-Chief," Iris added, wearing a paper crown. "Understood," Noelia nodded. All day, Noelia was banned from several areas of the house. Exactly at 6 o'clock, Julian gently touched her shoulder. "You can go in now." The living room was decorated with handmade crafts, balloons, and a sign that read, "Noelia Day." On the table was a slightly crooked cake covered in chocolate. "What day is it today?" Noelia asked. "The day you came into our lives," Elwyn said. "The day our family started breathing again," Iris added. Julian handed Noelia a small box. Inside was a silver necklace engraved with the words, "Still here." "Thank you," Noelia whispered. That evening, Julian stood beside Noelia, washing dishes. "They love you very much," he said. "They've taught me so much," Noelia replied. "Have you ever thought about staying longer?" Julian asked quietly. "That depends. Am I welcome?" she asked. "Very welcome." One Sunday afternoon, golden sunlight streamed through the windows. Julian took Noelia's hand. "I love you," he said. "And I'm terrified to say it, because the last time I loved someone this much, I lost her." "I'm not ready for everything that love brings," Noelia whispered, "but I don't want to leave." "Then let's try," Julian said. "Let's try." Life didn't turn into a fairy tale overnight, but something had changed. Julian was more present. He smiled more. Noelia didn't replace the girl's mother. She was the one who stayed long enough for them to believe that loving again doesn't mean forgetting. 1 year later, the garden behind the Hartman house was bathed in early morning sunlight. Not the harsh brightness of summer, but the gentle light of late spring, the kind of light that makes everything look as if it has just been forgiven after a long winter. The ceremony was small. No stage, no elaborate wedding dress, no large crowd of guests. Just family, a few close friends, and memories laid down gently, no longer sharp with pain. Iris stood beside Noelia, her hand tightly holding hers. She wore a simple white dress, her hair neatly braided, but her eyes were unusually serious, as if today were an important mission. "Are you nervous?" Iris whispered. "Yes," Noelia smiled softly, "but it's the kind of nervous that comes from happiness." Elwyn stood at the front, holding a small pillow with 2 rings resting on it. She kept looking down at them, then back up at her father, her eyes shining. "Don't cry, Dad," Elwyn warned him in advance. "Today is a happy day." Julian didn't answer. He only nodded, but when Noelia stepped forward, every effort to remain composed fell apart. Not because of the wedding dress, not because of the ceremony, but because of the way Noelia looked at Iris and Elwyn first, as if those 2 children had always been at the center of every decision she made in her life. "Are we ready?" Noelia bent down and asked. Iris nodded. "Our family is ready." In his vows, Julian did not speak of love as something romantic. He spoke of the nights Noelia sat beside the girls' beds when the nightmares returned, of how she never promised that everything would be okay. She only said, "I'm here." Of the first time he heard his daughter's laugh without fear attached to the sound. "You didn't come to replace anyone," Julian said, his voice trembling. "You came to stay, and that saved this family." Noelia didn't say much. She spoke only one sentence, but it was enough to silence everyone. "I choose to love you and the girls every single day, even on the days that aren't easy." Iris wiped away her tears before anyone noticed. Elowen gripped the ring pillow tightly, took a deep breath, and then placed the rings into her parents' hands like a sacred ritual she had been waiting for a very long time to perform. The ceremony ended not with fireworks, but with laughter, real laughter. 9 months later, the Hartman house echoed with crying once again, but this time no one was afraid. Twin baby boys were born on a softly rainy morning. Rowan cried loudly, angrily, as if announcing his presence to the entire world. Asher was quieter, his eyes wide open, looking around as though memorizing every face. Iris stood outside the delivery room, holding Elowen's hand. "We're big sisters now," Iris said. And this time, Elowen smiled, "we didn't lose anyone." Julian held each of his sons in turn, tears falling freely. Noelia looked at him, not the broken man from 2 years earlier, but a father who knew how to be present, how to love, and how to stay. That evening, after the whole house had fallen asleep, Noelia sat alone in the living room. She looked at the silver necklace around her neck, the words "Still here" reflecting softly in the light. Julian stepped out and draped a light sweater over her shoulders. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. "Staying?" Noelia shook her head. "I used to think family was something you were born into," she said. "Now I know. Family is something you choose every single day." Upstairs, Iris and Elowen slept soundly. The 2 baby boys breathed evenly in their cribs. The house was no longer perfect. There were toys scattered around, crayon marks on the walls, tiring evenings and difficult days. But in all that chaos, there was one thing that never went missing. Someone who stayed, someone who listened, someone who chose to love even after loss. And that is why this is no longer a story about a broken family. It is a story about a family that learned how to breathe again, together, after believing for a very long time that breathing would always hurt.